Is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. For us, for those of us who are somehow or the other acquainted with the Hare Krishna movement, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura is the spiritual master of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. And throughout or the manifestation of the Hare Krishna movement, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura plays a very, very important role. Although the Hare Krishna movement was established in the West in 1965, almost 33 years after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had passed away, still he still plays a very, very prominent role. He plays a prominent role because Srila Prabhupada put together and conceived this whole idea of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness on the basis of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions. So he's a very, very important personality in our tradition, and he is considered one of the Renaissance Acharyas, because Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, he made Krishna consciousness, I should say he taught how Krishna consciousness can be very much integrated into a modern lifestyle. Generally, people have this wrong notion or misconception that the teachings of the Vedas, which are thousands and thousands of years old, are antiquated or seem to be applicable only in a very rustic, traditional Indian setting. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta broke that mold and demonstrated how Krishna consciousness, or the whole bhakti process, can be applicable in a very modern context. Generally, especially here, people think that when you become a spiritualist, then the first thing you have to do is to give up things that you have and live a life of an ascetic or a monk, something like that. And so most people are worried, well, if I become a spiritualist, then should I be wearing saffron clothes? Should I give up things? Why should I give up? Giving up is not easy. So then they have this, they're at crossroads. On one hand, they may be attracted to bhakti. On the other hand, they have to give up things. So then it becomes a question of, do I want Krishna or do I want these things? These material things like a house and car and money and family, things like that. So people often find themselves at these crossroads, and more often than not, they choose one over the other. Choosing Krishna over this is a nice thing, however they don't know how to apply it, so they artificially renounce things. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura taught how to integrate everything into the service of Krishna. This is of course a fundamental teaching that Rupa Goswami gave, called yukta-vairagya. But Bhaktisiddhanta actually showed how it should be used, how things can be properly utilized in Krishna's service. So he's a Renaissance Acharya. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, he appeared in 1874 at a very special request by his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, who was also another Acharya in our discipline line. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura saw that from the time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had manifested his pastimes and then left in the late 1500s. Somehow or the other, in the following few hundred years, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had either dwindled or become corrupt, and people in the name of following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings were completely misrepresenting what Lord Chaitanya taught. They are called Apasampradayas. Apasampradaya means those things that don't represent, that look like bhakti but are really not bhakti. They are creations of someone's imagination. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura, who's another Renaissance Acharya, was finding himself alone, trying to revive the entire Hare Krishna movement the way Lord Chaitanya had taught it. And so he had offered very fervent prayers to Krishna that, my dear Lord Vishnu, please send someone really empowered to help me educate the world of what are the real teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So it is described that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati is a ray of Vishnu. He is an empowered personality who came at the very ardent plea of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. At the Chicago temple, we are studying the appearance and activities of Maharaj Rishabhdev. Maharaj Rishabhdev is said that is like the original person from whose teachings Jainism is derived. And Rishabhdev is the incarnation of Vishnu. And when he appeared, there are descriptions of his bodily features and qualities that indicate that he is a great person. Even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya had appeared, there are certain symptoms, bodily features and symptoms that identify him as a great person, Mahapurusha. So apparently there are 32 such symptoms, and they are called Samudrika Lakshana, such as there are 5 parts of the body that are broad, 5 that are high, like that. There are 32 such physical symptoms. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's soles were decorated or marked with special symbols of the flag, the lotus flower, etc., the fish. There's a whole list of symbols. That is how one recognized, oh, this is a special person. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appeared, his umbilical cord was wrapped around him the way the Brahmana thread is. And the persons who delivered, the midwives, and they all were very surprised. Oh, this is not ordinary. And as soon as, within a few days that Bhaktisiddhanta had appeared, within a few months, like this is February, and by July, so by the time he was 4 or 6 months old, it was the festival of Jagannath Puri, Jagannath Rath Yatra. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura was stationed at Jagannath Puri as the chief magistrate in the British Raj. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura was such a unique person that usually at that time, no Indians were given such high positions in the government. He was very unique, so they gave him a position like that. Yet Bhaktivinoda Thakura used to live near Navadvip, in a place called Godrumadvip, one of the islands of Navadvip. And the British Raj wanted Bhaktivinoda Thakura to come to Jagannath Puri and come to his office, but he was far away. So they laid an entire train line and made sure that the train stopped right outside Bhaktivinoda Thakura's house for his commute to work and back. So the British recognized this is not an ordinary person, this Bhaktivinoda Thakura. And whenever they had any issues that were not easily solvable, they would just give it to Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Say, you please take care of it. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura would solve it immediately. And Bhaktisiddhanta, who appeared in his house when Jagannath Rath Yatra was happening, it was the time for what's called Annaprashna, the very first grains that a child is fed. Usually a child is fed, the first grains are Vishnu Prasada. So, when Bhaktisiddhanta's mother, she brought Srimati Bhagavati Devi, she brought the child in front of Lord Jagannath, and because he was such a renowned person, she could go up the chariot of Lord Jagannath, and it had stopped right outside Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. So when she took the child up and placed in front of Lord Jagannath, a big garland of Jagannath fell, encircling the child. And everyone said, oh, this is a very auspicious sign. This child is not ordinary. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, since his childhood, showed those symptoms. And there are many such pastimes. I'm going to recount a few. When he was about 3.5 or 4 years old, his father had brought a crate of mangoes, case of nice mangoes. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, being a young child, picked a mango and ate it. So his father admonished him, chided him. Oh, you ate a mango before it was offered to Krishna? This is not nice. And at that age, he took a vow. He said, I am a sinner. I ate something before offering it to Vishnu. From here on, I will never eat a mango. And that vow he carried throughout his life. He never ate a mango. So one may say, oh, so what's about not eating a mango? It is a vow that a child has taken. As children, we made, in fact, even as grown-ups, we make many vows. And we know what it takes to follow them. And we can't follow so easily. But a child making a vow in all seriousness and following it for the rest of his life is something very unique. Anyone can say, after all, you were a little child and it's just a mango. Had you known better, you wouldn't have done it. Now that you've grown up, you know. So don't eat a mango next time. Okay. Where are the mangoes? Nothing like that. He made a vow and he stayed with it. By the time he was 9 years old, he was a very ardent reader, voracious reader. He liked to read everything and anything that came across. And his father was friends with the king of Midnapur. And Bhaktisiddhanta got a little, part-time job as a librarian. And he loved that job because all day he would read books that were in the library. And the king of Midnapur had a very, very huge library. Books from all around the world on different topics. And Bhaktisiddhanta had what's called photographic memory. Once he saw something, he never forgot it. He remembered it. So as he was reading books, think of it as scanning them. He knew everything that he was reading. He never forgot what he read. So by the time he had finished 9, 10 years old, he had memorized the entire library. And he knew it. And this would help him in the future. But he knew everything. Which book, what the book's contents were, the specific sentences in those books, everything he knew. Just by reading once. That would be nice, huh? And at that age, it is said that Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura could speak for 10 minutes on any shloka from the Bhagavad Gita. For most of us, we can speak on karmanyevadikaraste. I like that verse. But Bhaktisiddhanta could speak on any verse from the Bhagavad Gita for 10 minutes as a 9-year-old boy. So he had the whole Bhagavad Gita memorized. Memorize is one thing, memorization is one thing. to know what it means, and to speak intelligently about Bhagavad Gita to scholarly audience is a whole different ballgame. By the time he was 19, he had written a book on astronomy and astrology, using what's called Surya Siddhanta. This is considered a scholarly book. It talks about the model and structure of the universe and the orbits of all the different planetary systems around the Earth. Of course, the modern astronomical models are all what are called heliocentric, that the sun is the center of everything and the planets move around the sun. And the Vedic model is called geocentric. Everything is on the reference of the person observing, so it's from Earth. And it is described that because given the size of the universe, if you consider the distance between sun and Earth, they're practically the same in terms of being the center. So it doesn't matter whether you have a heliocentric view or a geocentric view, your calculations are fairly accurate or similar. So he had written a book, and called, so by the time he had written a book, he was 19, and all the scholars, it is described that to understand what he had written would take 5 scholars studying and analyzing it for 24 hours a day. Would take him about 3 years to figure out what he had written and how complex things he could write by the time he was 19. So they conferred the title upon him called Siddhanta Sarasvati. And he traveled far and wide with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur's job was such as a magistrate. And as he traveled to different places, they would visit the different Vaishnava temples. And he kept a very careful record of all the places he went, how they were performing worship in those places. And he started compiling a very, very nice book on the different practices, the worship methodologies, and all that he had remembered from the libraries. He compiled it all together. So by the time he was a young adult, he was ready. He was ready to understand and explain the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in a very, very unique manner for the modern world. At that time in India, the Gandhian movement was also taking on hold. 1896 is a significant year for us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas or followers of Srila Prabhupada, because 1896 is when Srila Prabhupada appeared in this world. In 1896, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura had a very special vision as well. One evening in 1896, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was pacing back and forth in his house, which is called a veranda, which is like a little space outside the door, the main door, and some space for people to come and gather. He was walking back and forth in his veranda. And the veranda, from the veranda you could see the Ganges flowing in Mayapur. And suddenly he saw on the other side of the Ganges this vision of a massive, huge temple. And that temple was such that it rose almost like to the sky. And there were Vaishnavas, the devotees of Krishna, from all parts of the world, from different races. The Indian people, the Caucasian, the African American, the Hispanics, the Chinese, the Russians, different races and ethnicities of people from different countries, all singing and dancing in front of Lord Chaitanya's, in front of Panchatattva. And so he narrated that vision to his son. And Bhaktisiddhanta took that seriously, that Bhaktivinoda Thakura had this vision. That means it's prophetic of something to happen in the future. And he gave that vision to Srila Prabhupada, that someday in the future, Bhaktivinoda Thakura had envisioned this massive structure, temple, a unique temple. And Prabhupada gave that vision to his followers. And as we know today, that vision is being accomplished. In Mayapur, they're building this, what's called the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. It's a superstructure and it's being constructed. They're hoping that in 2016, which marks the 50th anniversary of the Hare Krishna movement, the DDs will move into that new structure and officially it will be open for the public to come. It will be considered the largest temple in the world. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura's vision was such that Bhaktisiddhanta worked towards manifesting it. So you remember as we said, he was a Renaissance Acharya. There are apasampradayas or practices that are deviant from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching of pure bhakti. So Bhaktisiddhanta took that very seriously to challenge such, weeds in the pure bhakti process. He was called a living encyclopedia because he knew everything about any subject matter. There were times when he openly confronted some persons who were misleading people in the name of Lord Chaitanya. And there were times when he taught certain things in a very unique manner. One time there was a debate among the scholars in India that who was greater, a Brahmana or a Vaishnava? And there were strong arguments on both sides, whether a Brahmana is higher than a Vaishnava or whether a Vaishnava is higher than a Brahmana. And they did not know how to resolve it, so all the scholars got together, hundreds of them got together to have many days of debate. Brahmanas are those who are supposed to be the intelligentsia of society, and they have the responsibility of preserving Vedic knowledge. And Vaishnavas are those who are devotees of Krishna. Our understanding is that Vaishnavas, because they are direct devotees of Krishna, they are automatically Brahmanas. However, a Brahmana may not be a devotee of Krishna. So when this debate was not conclusive, they invited Bhaktivinoda Thakura to come. And Bhaktivinoda Thakura could not go. So Bhaktisiddhanta, who was about 25 or 26 at that time, he requested Bhaktivinoda Thakura for permission to go and resolve this debate. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura told him, yeah, you can go, just don't hammer them. He said, okay. So he went. And when he spoke, the first day and a half or 2 days, he just glorified the Brahmanas. How Brahmanas are so important that they are considered to be the head of the social body. How the Brahmanas, what they speak is as good as what Vishnu speaks. And how Lord Vishnu accepts food, offerings of food, through the Brahmanas. And without Brahmanas and Brahmanical culture, society would not have any direction, etc. And the crowd cheered him like anything. Yeah, and he just glorified the Brahmanas using Vedic references. The next 2 days, he glorified the Vaishnavas. And he glorified the Vaishnavas such that he established, using sound Vedic backing, that that the Vaishnavas are superior than Brahmanas. But just the way he did it, without making one group feel less than the other, that both sides cheered like anything. And they were all very happy. They were not feeling sad that, oh, the Brahmanas are blessed. They were just happy. The whole crowd mobbed around him because they all wanted to touch his feet. And these were all big scholars. He's a young man. So it became a ruckus. The police had to be called just to stop the mob. So they told him, why don't you let the crowd touch your feet? He said, no way, no touching my feet. But the crowd wouldn't listen. So they took Bhaktisiddhanta to his side. They had a bucket of water. They put his feet in the water. And they told him, now from the back door approach, they whisked him away. And they used that big buckets of water and sprinkled on everyone. That way the crowd would stop. He was such a personality. He knew exactly how to convey the most important message without anyone's feeling beaten up. Then Bhaktisiddhanta showed what is called real yukta-vairagya. And this is important for us because we are, almost all of us, most of us are householders. And we have this often, the dilemma, or should I be renounced? Or how do I manage the duties of my life? Money, responsibilities, house, family, etc., assets. I cannot just give them up. If I give them up, how am I going to survive? So Bhaktisiddhanta showed how to do it. At a time when there were so many persons who were renouncing everything and going away to the Himalayas or living in ashrams, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura took his devotees on a tour to Vrindavan. And usually we'd say that when you enter Vrindavan, you're supposed to enter bare feet as a matter of respect to the holy dham. Bhaktivinoda Thakura went in a convertible. Big car, convertible with the top down, and he had worn he was a sannyasi. Sannyasi is supposed to wear only two pieces of cloth. One is the lower garment and the upper garment. That's it. But he wore this big, long suit-like thing. It's called sherwani or something. And nice big turban on his head and on shoes. And went to this big convertible car. There's a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta like that, if you've ever seen it. And he entered Vrindavan like that. Everyone was shocked. What is this? What is he doing? Why is he modernizing everything? So then he taught. He did it intentionally. It was a message that he was sending out. The message was that renunciation does not mean you give up things. Because we don't own anything in the first place. Srila Prabhupada taught this, that if you say, he would use the example of the American Express Bank. He said, if you stand in front of American Express Bank and say, I renounce this bank, does it mean anything? The bank is not yours in the first place. What are you renouncing? So like that, anything that's there in our possession is not ours anyway. Because we didn't create anything. These things were there before we came. The house is made of wood, stone, mud, water, iron, and these things we don't create. They're already there. We just put them all together and slap our name on top of it. So that's called false proprietorship. By the way, even then if we have a house and name, or we don't own it, right? It's a bank that owns it. We think that we are owning it. We pay money for it each month called mortgage, and you slip on mortgage payments and they knock on your door and say, ouch buddy, this house is not yours. A false sense of proprietorship. We think, oh, this is mine. Are we here that we come into this world naked, without anything, and we leave this world like that, And in between, we're very busy collecting things, making them ours. So he taught that renunciation does not mean you give up things, but renunciation really means that whatever you have in your possession, that they are utilized in Krishna's service. This is called renunciation. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura wrote a beautiful song, Manasa Deha Geha Jokichu Mura. Whatever I call mine, Manasa, my mind, Deha, my body, Geha, my house. And he says, Arpini Tuva Pade, I'm offering it to you, my dear Krishna, Nanda Kishora. So this is renunciation. Without claiming proprietorship on things that are in our possession, using them in Krishna's service. Use suppose house, using the house in Krishna's service. How is that done? There is a deity of Krishna in the house. There is Krishna's names being chanted in the house. Everything that is cooked and consumed first is offered to Krishna. The car that we have, it is utilized in Krishna's service. The sense of being responsible with our money and time and house is that on behalf of Krishna, we are taking care of these things. There is a family, I was told, that has a very nice way of expressing this. That on their home answering machine, whoever calls, they hear this recorded message. Welcome, or you've reached Krishna's house. Sorry, we're not here to take your message. Something, leave a message and we'll call you back. That's the consciousness that everything in this house is Krishna's. This family is Krishna's. Although they are children or child born to me, they are Krishna's parts and parcels, and Krishna is giving me the opportunity to be a transcendental caretaker, babysitter. They're Krishna's children. The spouse, this is not my spouse per se, although that is my responsibility. The living entity in that body is Krishna's part and parcel. And I am to serve my spouse as a service to Krishna. These things protect us from enjoying. The other opposite, the tendency that we have is to enjoy things in our possession, thinking they are mine. Hey, I've worked hard for my money, I should enjoy it. I have worked very hard to build this house, I should enjoy this house. This enjoyment tendency neglects or overlooks the real proprietor. So, the whole path of Krishna consciousness is to learn systematically how to transform our consciousness from enjoying to serving or utilizing everything in Krishna's service. So here's a question. So we don't experience any enjoyment? Are we supposed to be like suffering and only Krishna is enjoying? So the answer is given by Srila Jiva Goswami. He says, Bhajaniya Paramu Purusha Sukhamatra Swa Sukhatva. That because we are parts and parcels of Krishna, as Krishna enjoys, we being his parts and parcels, we enjoy. So when we dedicate our life for the pleasure of and happiness of Krishna, when Krishna becomes happy, we are automatically happy. When we try to become happy separately or independent of Krishna, that happiness comes with its share of suffering. It's called duality. In this material world, every happiness has its counterpart that comes with it, suffering. For example, some people enjoy drinking liquor, let's say. So the happiness from drinking comes with the suffering of a spoiled liver. Or the happiness of smoking comes with it the consequence of eroded lungs. Everything in this world is called duality. There are two sides, happiness and distress. There is nothing in this world. There is absolutely nothing. Even if you want, you can try for the next 50 years and do research if you like. There is nothing that is genuinely happiness without any suffering attached to it. There isn't. As long as one is pursuing that happiness independent of Krishna. When there is service to Krishna, because Krishna is not in the realm of duality, there is no concept of suffering along with it. In fact, in service to Krishna, even suffering is considered happiness. So our process of Krishna consciousness is to take things in from the category that we call mind. What are things in the category of mind? A whole long list. And engage them in Krishna's service. And how to do that requires little guidance. So anyone who is trying to serve Krishna, if they try to serve without guidance, then they will find themselves in a tough position. Because without guidance, it's difficult to traverse the complexities of material energy. Because what we're doing is taking material things, energy, and trying to spiritualize them. It requires guidance. It requires proper understanding of the principles of bhakti. Because we have a tendency now, I can use in Krishna's service, then our tendency is to keep buying things, hoping to use it in Krishna's service. So Bhaktisiddhanta taught what is yukta-vairagya. How this is a very devotees who don't understand yukta-vairagya, they don't know how to live a practical Krishna conscious life. They struggle with it. They struggle with either too much renunciation, meaning giving up, and then feeling really miserable, or they accumulate too much, thinking these are all in the realm of Krishna's service. So it's important to know how to practice yukta-vairagya. Without vairagya, one is unclear. One carries a lot of baggage. One carries the baggage of attachment. Attachment is these things that I have, these ideas that I have, and they're mine. And when we carry them from one state of life to another, from one state of life to another, or aspirations, etc. So if we don't know how to utilize them in Krishna's service, then it's going to be a rough ride. So part of knowing how to utilize in Krishna's service, that there are some things that we have to keep aside. And this is yukta-vairagya. Anasaktasya vishayat yatarham upayunjata. Anasakti, without attachment to those things outside of Krishna's service. According to one's eligibility, one should utilize things. Eligibility is determined by service that one has. Suppose we'll take the example of a brahmachari. A brahmachari, if he thinks, oh, I can buy 3 cars and use them in Krishna's service. he's not eligible because that's not his service. Then he cannot, even if he uses them in Krishna's service, he still can become corrupt because that's not his service. A grahastha, just because we have to get to work and back and grocery shopping, whatever, then they can be a car. But how is it used in Krishna's service? So one may ask, oh, if I go to the grocery store, is that Krishna's service? Well, it depends on the consciousness with which we went to the grocery store. How we buy our fruits and vegetables. Our consciousness determines whether that is yukta-vairagya activity or not. If we look at fruits and vegetables and say, wow, this would be nice for me to enjoy, then that's not yukta-vairagya. That's bhoga. But if we look at fruits and vegetables and consider, oh, this would be nice to offer to Krishna, then that's a proper yukta-vairagya activity, like that. We are the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That means the consciousness determines the types of activities and the quality of activity. So Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura taught us in a very, very clear manner. I'll end soon because I have a feeling there might be some discussion about yukta-vairagya. So I'll end soon. But I'll also share one pastime that is an important thing for us to learn. For me, I like to tell stories. But for me, telling a story always has some other thing with it. So what can we learn from it? Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura took all his disciples to Vrindavan for yatra, parikram. And every day he would speak on different topics about Krishna. One day, and it's described, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada at that time was young Abhay Charana Ravinda. He was not even Abhay Charana Ravinda at that time, he was just Abhay Babu, Abhay Charana. And he would always like to sit and hear Bhaktisiddhanta speak. And Bhaktisiddhanta would speak such high philosophy that it said that Abhay Charan didn't understand what Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking. He didn't understand anything. He found it very difficult to comprehend the esoteric nature of Bhaktisiddhanta's speech. But he always sat there just to be in the presence of Bhaktisiddhanta. At the same time, some of his Bhaktisiddhanta's really big sannyasis and renowned brahmacharis, they came to class quite late. So Bhaktisiddhanta asked them, why are you coming late to class? Where did you go? So they said, oh, Prabhupada, we went to visit the different temples in Vrindavan. So Bhaktisiddhanta challenged them. He said, what did you see? You think that just going to the temple and looking at the deity, that is how you see Krishna? If you see all you can see like that is black stone. Because Krishna deity is usually carved from black stone. All you will see is black stone. You don't see Krishna with your eyes. You should see Krishna with your ears. And he described that it is more important than looking at the deity. It is more important to hear about Krishna. Because without hearing, what we see will be misinterpreted. What we will see will not be clear. But if our hearing is proper, then we will see with the right conception. So it's said that hearing is more important than seeing the deity. And thanks to Srila Prabhupada's training, oftentimes deity worship is given secondary position than the position of hearing and chanting. It's called the Bhagavata Marga. Whenever you have an opportunity to, we have an an opportunity to hear versus doing an arati, we should hear. Not that we should neglect arati, that's not my point here. But hearing is important. We should give anything and everything away to the opportunity to hear about Krishna. So Bhaktisiddhanta chastised his disciples. But don't think going here and there, you're taking darshan of this deity, that deity, that's you're going to get something. And then he said, one should never aspire to see Krishna. But one should act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you. Then you have vision of Krishna. Just rushing to see Krishna is not. And so he taught, one time he had come to the temple, and the curtains had opened, and he had forgotten his spectacles. So actually the vision was not clear. So one of his disciples said, Guru Maharaj, can I go and bring your spectacles so you can see the deity? He said, what is the use anyway? Even if I have spectacles and I see the deity, what's the use anyway? I would rather stand right behind a very sincere devotee, because Krishna is very attracted to see sincere devotees. When I stand behind him, Krishna's glance will fall upon me also. So I'm more interested in that. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like that. In Jagannath Puri temple, when the curtains are open, crowds throng to see the deity. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would always stand by what's called the Garuda Stamba. It's the pillar on top of which Garuda is waiting, ready. If the Lord ever wants to go somewhere, he's ready to go. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would always stand by the Garuda Stamba. And those of you who have gone to Jagannath Puri, if you stand where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stood, you can only see Lord Jagannath, you cannot see Baladev and Subhadra. And that was the rasa, because he's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, his gaze is always on Lord Jagannath. So in that crowd and commotion, one elderly lady who was a little short, who could see over the crowd, she quickly climbed the Garuda Stamba. And one foot she kept on Garuda Stamba, and without knowing, the other foot she kept on Lord Chaitanya's shoulder. And she was eagerly seeing Lord Jagannath. So Lord Jagannath's servant, Govinda, he was shocked. Like, how would you put your foot on Lord Gauranga? He tapped the lady and said, what are you doing? Are you crazy? This is Lord Chaitanya. Get down immediately. So Lord Chaitanya stopped Govinda. He said, no. I wish I had so much enthusiasm to see Lord Jagannath. Unfortunately, I don't have, but this lady has. At least I can be her servant. I can serve this lady by facilitating her enthusiasm to see Krishna. That means our what attracts Krishna is not, oh, I want to take darshan. What attracts Krishna is, are we serving the devotees? When we are serving the devotees, Krishna will call upon us. I want to meet such and such Vaishnava. Who is this Vaishnava who is serving the devotees? I want to meet that. That is far more valuable than standing first in the line. Krishna, look at me. Krishna doesn't care. So Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura was a fantastic acharya. There, and how can we speak about him in an hour or 5 hours or 1 year? It's unlimited personality. And we speak about Bhaktisiddhanta so that just by hearing about a person like this, we feel cleansed. We feel cleansed and we can aspire for what a person, that we can get a tiny fraction of that bhakti. I didn't narrate the pastime of he chanting 1 billion names some of the time. Any comments, questions? Yukta-vairagya question. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the nice talk. I had a question actually not on yukta-vairagya, but you mentioned the importance of hearing about Krishna.
Yeah.
And which is great. Sometimes, like if you're alone and you want to read, you are reading. And so, how do you compare hearing about Krishna versus reading about Krishna?
If we are reading the Bhaktivedanta purports, that is also hearing, because the Bhaktivedanta purports are a sound vibration of Prabhupada. Between reading and hearing, hearing is better. Because, well, in one sense, hearing and reading are the same, because you're associating with the reader, with the person who's written the book. So we should know who we are associating with. And if we're reading Prabhupada's books, then that's good. It's as good as hearing. Hearing has a very special effect that it creates a relationship. So either we're hearing Srila Prabhupada or reading from Bhaktivedanta purports. Both are similar, because Prabhupada dictated all the purports. So it is that sound vibration anyway. Is that okay? Yeah. Anything about yukta-vairagya? Anyone has any difficulty applying, utilizing things in Krishna's service? How to utilize family? Yeah, Prabhu.
So what is the definition of
Vairagya means renunciation. And yukta means to engage or to connect something. So yukta-vairagya means to engage things in Krishna's service as in the spirit of renunciation. So Prabhupada gave a very simple example for this. He said, suppose we're walking on the street and we find a wallet on the ground. Then a person who is a materialist will be very happy and say, wow, there's money in it. This is windfall. God has been very kind to me. I somehow found money. I keep it. Even if you don't think God will everything, oh, this is great. He said the renunciates, the vairagis will look at the wallet and say, this is not my wallet, I should not touch it, and I will go away. This is the general concept of renunciation. Oh, this is not mine. I cannot touch something that is not mine. He said that the real renouncer, the devotee, will take the wallet, find who's the owner, and return it to the owner. This is real, this is complete renunciation. So the Isha Upanishad says that everything in creation belongs to Krishna. So then the right way of using things that are in creation is to use them in Krishna's service, returning it to the real owner. This is yukta-vairagya. Yukta means to use or engage in the spirit of renunciation. So things that we call mine, my house, my car, my family, my money, whatever, mine. The spirit is to use it in Krishna's service without wrongly thinking they're mine. Actually, everything is Krishna's. I'm just a caretaker. I'm signing the bills on behalf of Krishna. Then our sense of responsibility grows. How we take care of everything. This is Krishna's money. You know, for example, it's described. If we have $100 in our pocket that we think is ours, and someone else's $100, and they say, can you please take care of this for me? How would you spend 100 versus the other? You should be very careful. Oh, this is someone else's, I can't spend it. So when you start seeing things as Krishna's, the sense of responsibility, the caretaking increases. Versus if I think they're mine, then I can be the enjoyer and do whatever I want with it. Who should tell me? Why should anyone tell me what to do with it? Then that is not vairagya. Krishna describes that one has to face the consequences of karmic reactions for thinking like that. That this is for my enjoyment. There's no karmic reaction. It's called a karma. Because it's Krishna's. There's a whole different laws of energy work on such consciousness. A karma, there's no karmic reactions from it. And when there are no karmic reactions, the soul, who we are, we become released from the karmic consequences. One of the greatest karmic consequences is this material body. We get a material body as a karmic consequence. It's called karma bandhana. So as our karma, there's no reaction and there's no opportunity for another material body. We have full opportunity for our spiritual existence. So many people say, well, I don't care for religion, I don't care for spirituality. All I care about is to be a good person. And the definition of good is so vague. How can anyone be good without knowing how to be good? What is our definition of being good? Well, speak the truth, be nice to others. But that's not necessarily good. Within that good comes with its share of, I guess, the bad. Because duality is always, we're operating in duality. So our goal is to be absolutely good, meaning on the platform of the absolute, on the spiritual platform. Like that. Does that answer your question? Oh, we're not ready yet. I think I'll move down. Yeah.
That's a small comment.
Okay, before you ask a comment, can someone go down and find out what's happening with the bowl and offering?
Another 5-10 minutes.
Then they will make an offering?
Yes.
So another 10 minutes after that? Very nice.
Prabhu, I heard that the king of Kerala, that means Trivandrum, built the Bhaktivinoda Swami temple. Today we have a $500 billion worth of gold. So that king, even today, his descendants are still there. And then the way he acts is he goes to the temple every day. But what I heard is they were the owners because the kingdom, they came from the kingdom generations. So that whole $500 billion belongs to them. But what they did is they put in the trust in the name of Bhaktivinoda Swami downstairs. And even today, there might be a billionaires, but still he will act like a servant. He comes and says everything happens. This is because everything belongs to Krishna. And then he acts as a servant. He acts like that. Okay. See, that is a comment for the generations what the king is. But for us, today we may think that I want to earn more and give some donations to Krishna for this, that, whatever. I have some desire. So, but what happens? How to balance this? I have a desire to say I'll earn more, and then I want to give it also for Krishna. But what happens? I tried a little bit initially, but it hampered my devotional service. It means more work, more money, that you're not able to do the devotional service. So you can't do that, you can't do this. So in what way should balance our lives in that case?
Srila Prabhupada taught us that the way we develop this attitude of being caretakers on Krishna's behalf is that in the temples, which I haven't done yet and I would like to do, is to read all the accounts to the deity. we spent your money like this, we utilized your money for these projects. This is reporting to you because you are the owner of everything. Or things within the temple, now I'm talking of the house. So in our house we get an income, right? Or a salary, it's an income. Then it is expressed to the deity of the house. In this month or in this time period, so much money came in. This is how we spent the money. These are some areas where our expenses are high or we were careless. We will become more careful about this, etc., etc. So if that spirit is there, then if any money was spent frivolously, you have to stand in front of the deity and say, well, I spent all this money for my enjoyment. I'm sorry. So it's a practice that all the accounts are read to the deity. Whether it's temple or house, it must be done. That's the spirit. Now, in the well-intentioned idea that if I earn more, I can give more to Krishna, in that there is a little problem. It is not about earning more and giving to Krishna. It is that whatever I'm earning is for Krishna anyway. That's more important. So then whatever Krishna gives in my responsibility, I take care of that money carefully. You understand? So if we have, let's say, 2 or 3 children and one child is more careful with money, you might give them more money and someone else who careless, a little less money. Regardless, the teaching is be careful with your money. So it's not that you need very big salary to give to Krishna. It is whatever salary is coming is anyway coming from Krishna. It may come through the agency of my boss or this company, but this is Krishna's money. It's just coming in a different way. And Krishna is giving us money to take care of it. Be responsible with this money. And the responsibility is, how do I minimize my expenses? Not that I don't have to expend. How do I minimize it such that I have more for returning it back to Krishna? Anyway, Krishna's money. That spirit is important. It doesn't mean that, the family starves because of this Krishna's money. No. Krishna is saying, take care of this. Utilize it nicely, properly. That means no frivolous expenditures. But thinking that, if I earn more, I can give more, there's a danger in that thought. Because I had a conversation with his young man a few years ago. I saw him at the temple and I asked him, how's your chanting going on? He said, I have not been chanting at all. I said, oh really, why not? He said, no, I'm just busy making all these plans. My plan is to earn $1 million and donate the million to the temple so that there are no more financial worries ever. So I asked him, who gave you this service? He said, nobody. It's my decision. I said, when nobody is giving you this service, your own decision will never work. He said, why not? It's such a nice idea. That's a nice way of serving Krishna. I said, have you ever stopped and paused and considered whether Krishna would like you to serve in this way? He said, no, I never thought about it. I said, then that is not service. If Krishna says do something like this, then you will happen. If that indication you haven't received from Krishna, that earn a lot of wealth and give it will not work. Better, the instruction you receive is to chant Hare Krishna. So then some people will say, I will chant, Prabhuji, when Krishna tells me to chant. Krishna has already said again and again and again. So you should start. Don't wait for it.
Prabhu, just now you said that the indication that comes from Krishna. So how is that
How is that indication? The Bhagavad Gita is full of indications.
But read, but I don't, but I don't get inspired by those indications. I know, there are the bits and pieces I do,
but those are indications. The Bhagavatam is full of indications. The devotee is giving you instructions, it's full of indications of Krishna. But if you are looking for something specific way that Shyamasundar should appear in your house with his flute, knock on your door and say, Shyam Prabhu, will you please chant some rounds? Only then I will hear. Jai Shri Shiva. Then we are not servants of Krishna. Krishna is our servant. He has to remind us, Master, time to chant your round. So Krishna has given us a lot of indications and inspirations to do things. If you're not getting inspired, the best thing is to be in the association of those persons who are always inspired. Because by the power of association, we get the qualities of the persons we are associating with. So if we take, let's say, Prabhupada's association or the Vaishnava's association, and if they are inspired, we get inspired. Always, association is what's the most important. As soon as we feel uninspired about anything about bhakti, the first thing to do is just be in the room with those who are inspired, and it will change us. Yes.
When it comes to indications and instructions from Krishna, is that correct to say that Guru's instructions are really instructions from Krishna?
Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Guru cannot give instruction without Shastra. And Sadhus also. If you just say Guru, there's a problem. That I will only listen to my Guru. This is what we were discussing yesterday in our temple Bhagavatam class. That when Guru says, run and go do that service, my gosh, I have so much enthusiasm to run and do something. Another devotee will say, Prabhu, can you run and get some? No. Guru has not told me. You can ask my Guru to tell me and I will run. He'll be like, dear Guru Maharaj, can you please ask Nityananda Prana to get some water? And get a letter, my dear NPD. Accept my best. Get some water. Yes, Guru. I am fulfilling the order of my Guru. This is very immature. Completely immature. That I only will listen to my Guru. Anyone else says something, I don't care. It is also very immature that I listen to everybody and forget listening to my Guru. Somebody says do this, Guru says do that. First come, first serve. That is also immature. In fact, Guru's instruction is serve the Vaishnavas. You want to hear a story of Ramanujacharya? Ramanujacharya sent a message with two of his disciples. Go to such and such town and tell that family that I'll be visiting them. I'll stay in their house for a